And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and today we are doing a video on an international rugby competition where the USA Women's national team is taking center stage. It is the Pacific Four Series. The Pacific Four Series actually started last year, and it was between the USA women's team and the Canadian national rugby team. It was a best of two series in that one. Unfortunately, USA lost to Canada in both of those games, which we'll go a little bit more into detail in just a little bit. But this year's Pacific Four Series will have New Zealand and Australia involved. They were not able to take part of the inaugural edition simply because of COVID issues. But this year, it will involve all four teams. All four teams are powerhouses in the women's rugby division. Again, we have the USA, who is ranked currently at number 7, Canada ranked number 3, Australia number 6, and the Black Ferns of New Zealand ranked number 2, only behind the England women's national team. So a little quick overview, and then I'll go a little bit more into detail, just reminding you about the series. It kicks off this weekend, and it's going to take place in New Zealand, which is nice because that is going to be the site of the Women's Rugby World Cup, technically the 2021 edition. Because of COVID, it got pushed back to this year, but it's still considered the 2021 Women's Rugby World Cup that will take place in New Zealand. This will give a good chance for all four of these teams to not only get some valuable playing time, playing experience, but also just to get acclimated with the New Zealand area where they will be playing the Rugby World Cup later in October. So, kicks off this weekend, tomorrow. I'm filming this today on Saturday, Sunday, June 5th, 5:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time kickoff. USA starts off the series against our rival to the north, the number 3 ranked Canada. Next weekend, Saturday, June 11th, again 5:15 Pacific Standard Time. They'll be going against the number 6 ranked Australia Wallaroos. Sorry, that's how they pronounce Wallaroos. And Friday, June 17th, the final game of the Pacific Four Series for USA. 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, so it's a late start. It's actually going to be Saturday at midnight for you East Coast fans. But Friday, June 17th, 9 p.m. on the West Coast versus the number 2 Black Ferns. Again, only ranked behind the number 1 England women's team in the worldwide women's rugby rankings. So, again, this Pacific Four Series is really, really nice. Again, it not only gives the USA some valuable play time. It gives a lot of their players some great play time, but especially for this year, it's a good chance to give them a little bit of conditioning and a little bit of experience with the teams that they'll be playing in the Rugby World Cup. Of course, I'll be doing an in-depth video series on the Women's Rugby World Cup because it's going to be really, really exciting with the women's this year. But they'll be actually in Pool B with Canada. So they're going to be getting to know our neighbors to the north, the Canadian team, ranked number 3. Also in that pool is the number 5th ranked Italian women's team, and then the number 12th ranked Japan team. Also, this will give a good chance for Australia and New Zealand to get to know each other. Both of those teams, 2 and 6 ranked, are going to be in Pool A, along with Wales and Scotland. And then just for you guys to know, Pool C is where the number 1 ranked team England is there, along with the number 4 ranked France, and then Fiji and South Africa round out the teams of 12 in the Women's Rugby World Cup. Again, taking later on in October. But going over a little bit more in depth with the teams that USA are playing against. As I mentioned before, last year, the Pacific Four Series was kind of reduced down to the Pacific 2. Had Canada and USA play against each other twice. USA unfortunately lost both of those games, 15-9 and 26-13. Overall record, Canada and USA women's, with no surprise, have played each other the most times for the USA women's history of rugby. 41 games against each other. USA is 19-21 against Team Canada, with the last 5 games swinging in favor of Canada, 1 for 4 for USA Women's. Hopefully, they'll be able to bounce back and get some wins in this series. And with Australia, USA have fared much, much better. They're 5-0 against Australia. With New Zealand, the Black Ferns, they have only won once out of 13 tries, so they're 1-12 against New Zealand. But New Zealand is a very tough team. So the way the Pacific Force Series is going to work, it's a round-robin series. Every team is going to play each other once. Whoever has the most points or most wins at the end of the series gets the... they're probably playing for a trophy, but right now it's pretty much for bragging rights, though in the following years, starting with next year's 2023 Pacific Force Series, this series will be a pathway to qualifying for Rugby World Cups in the future. So again, this is a great thing for the women's USA Women's Rugby team to, again, not only get experience, it's a pathway to get to the Rugby World Cup. Also, too, it's playing against some really talented teams. The only way the teams get better is really to play against really tough competition. None tougher than the number 2 and the number 3 ranked teams. Australia number 6 are all 3 teams are above the USA, who are ranked number 7 currently in the world rankings. So again, it gives the USA Women's a lot of experience, and also just revealed by head coach of the USA Women's team, Rob Kane, it's gonna get this series is gonna give a lot of USA women players a lot of experience, because unfortunately the way that this series kind of aligned schedule-wise, it aligned exactly at the same time as the Alliance Premier 15's Women's Competition Championship. If you don't know, Premiership Rugby is one of the top European competitions based in England. The women's version, the Alliance Premier 15's, just had their championship last week, and congratulations to the Saracens Women's Club for winning that championship, beating the Exeter Chiefs. The beauty of that competition is there's a lot of American representation in that league, in just those 2 teams alone. So unfortunately, because of that, the U.S. were not able to have about 2, 4, 6, 8, 9 players, unfortunately, not able to participate in this series, including the current captain, Kate Zachary, and Hope Rogers, one of the top capped players for women's rugby currently. Both of them have experience with the prior Rugby World Cup. So that leadership, that experience, it could possibly hurt the USA women's team that's going to the Pacific Force Series. But, I'll put up the lineup with the starting 23 that head coach Rob Kane put up. It still is, if you're not too familiar with women's rugby for the USA, it still is a very impressive lineup. It has a lot of experience. I mean, they are going to be missing a lot of experience with Hope Rogers and Kate Zachary, along with Alev Kelter not being in the group. But you still have, we'll take it from the top going down to the bottom, you have that front row. All 3 members part of the clubs that they represent are also written there that they play. A lot of the clubs you'll notice are either in the Premier 15's group that I just mentioned that plays in Europe, or are currently playing in the Premier Women's League here in America. Yes, there is a women's professional rugby league alongside the Major League Rugby that the men's play. So again, a lot of these players have a lot of experience, starting with the front row, Katie Bronson, Joanna Kalinski, and Nick James. All 3 of those players have a lot of experience. A lot of them are capped. Katie Bronson, right behind Hope Rogers, 25 caps for the USA women's team. She was also part of that 2017 Rugby World Cup team. Nick James was as well. Christine Sommers in the number 4 position plays for Gloucester Hartpury, which is a team in the Alliance Premier 15s. She was named captain instead for Kate Zachary, who will not be able to participate in this tournament. Christine Sommers has 17 caps to her name. Moving on to the number 5 position, Evie Aschenbrucker from the San Diego Surfers. That's a team in the Women's Premier League here in America. She is uncapped, so this will be her chance to get her first cap. At the 6 and 7 position, you have Hayley Taufo, who plays for Loughborough's Lightnings. They're in Leicestershire. She has 3 caps under her name. Georgie Paris Redding In the number 7, the lock position there, the flanker position there, plays for the Sale Sharks. This will be her first chance to get a cap for the USA Women's. In the number 8 spot, Katherine Johnson plays for the Twin Cities Amazons. Again, American USA Premier Women's Team. 3 caps to her name. In the scrum half position, Bridget Khalil plays for Beantown Rugby Football Club. Again, another team in the Women's Premier League here, uncapped. This will be her first chance to get a cap for the national women's team. In the fly half position, Mackenzie Hawkins. She plays for Life West Gladiatrix. From 6 caps. That's a team that's located in Hayward, California. Plays for the women's premier team. The wingers, 11 and 14, Tess Fury for the New York Rugby Club, and Emily Henrik from Beantown Rugby Football Club. Both of them, Tess Fury has experience with the 2017 Rugby World Cup team. Emily Henrik plays for the Beantown Rugby team that plays out of Boston, Massachusetts. In the centers, you have Katana Howard, who plays for the Sale Sharks. Bulo Matayatoga, hopefully I didn't butcher that name too much, plays for the Lowbell Lightnings. And then you have your bench and reserves. You have Catherine Shredder from Beantown Rugby Football Club, Maya Learned from the Gloucester Hartpury Rugby Football Club, Charlie Jacoby from the Lowbell Lightnings, Jordan Matthias, who has USA Sevens experience, Elizabeth Carnes, Life with Gladiatrix, Shelby Lynn, Berkeley All Blues. She might get her first cap if she comes off the bench. The Berkeley All Blues plays in Berkeley, California. Amy Tale Bonte, Life West Gladiatrix, 9 caps. And Sam Sullivan plays for the Colorado Grey Wolves, also a team that plays for the Women's Premier League here in the United States. She might also get her first cap if she comes off of the bench. So again, it's a team that may not have as much experience as some of the players that are not there, but it is a team that is strong, pretty solid, especially in the front 3. That front row is going to be the strong point for the women's rugby team. But again, the purpose of this series, which is great, is to just give the women's team the experience, the caps, give a lot of the uncapped players a chance to participate, and just prepare, and give Rob Kane a chance to kind of look at the talent that is being developed and find out who is ready to play later on in October for the Rugby World Cup. And again, by that time, then you have the missing players like Kate Zachary and Hope Rogers will hopefully be able to join the lineup. There's another player, Jenny Cronish, who unfortunately could not play because she suffered an injury, so she might be able to come back for the Rugby World Cup. So again, this is just a really, really great tournament and experience for the USA Women's team. If you love rugby and you want to get into women's rugby, or you love women's rugby, this is a great series to watch, to root for Team USA. And the beauty is it will be streamed on the World Rugby YouTube channel. So just go to World Rugby YouTube channel. It will be there. So again, for the USA-Canada game, it will be 5:15 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Sunday, June 5th. So that's tomorrow. So check that out. And yeah, it's going to be a really, really great series. Right now, again, the talent here is really, really strong. Hopefully USA will come off with at least some close games. I'm not predicting that they'll win the series, though that would be amazing. But again, it would just give them a lot of experience and a chance to prepare when it's really, really hard to prepare or to get enough experience outside of a Rugby World Cup competition. But this will be the chance for the USA women's team and Canada and Australia and New Zealand to kind of get that experience before October rolls around. So again, don't forget, it is tomorrow, the first game versus Canada, 5:15 Pacific Standard Time, Sunday, June 5th, on the World Rugby YouTube channel. But again, if you don't see it live, obviously it will be archived so you can check it out. And then make sure you watch the other 2 games. And again, they'll show all the games. So you'll see Australia, New Zealand, and Canada playing their games as well if you want to watch those. But again, it's a real great precursor to the Rugby World Cup, which I'm very excited about. As I mentioned before, way back then, I feel USA has a really good chance to do well in this Rugby World Cup. Remember, they won the very first Women's Rugby World Cup back in 1991, and then they placed second in the following two after that. The prior year in 2017, they placed fourth. So, after a little bit of a downswing, I feel, especially now with the announcement of the 2033 Rugby Women's World Cup happening here in America, I feel that the women's USA Women's Division is going to start rising up in talent, and it all starts here. It all starts with this Pacific 4 Series, the preceding Rugby Women's World Cup, competition like the Premier Women's League here in America, the fact that so many USA Women's are playing in Premier 15s over in Europe. So again, it's as much as I talk a lot about the men's game, the women's game is starting to get developed as well. And you look at the college scene as well with teams like Life and Lindenwood doing so well on the college scene. You're just developing these players and getting them ready for the international stage. So I'm really excited. So again, good luck Team USA. Go USA. And hopefully we'll see them do very well in this series. And again, like I said, as the World Cup gets closer, I'll do a real in-depth video on the Rugby Women's World Cup in October, taking place in New Zealand as well. So again, thank you very much for watching this video. Hope it has intrigued and entertained you, and that you are going to watch Team USA compete in the Pacific 4 Series. And as always, I'll see you on the pitch.